got the Ayatollah of fantasy rock and roller with us today, Adam Rank. How you doing, Rank?
They look great in person, and I just can't wait to next year where we can pack it full of 25,000.
Hey, Bob, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. I didn't know it was Ball Guys Day. It was being ranked. I mean, how do you lose?
This is the Dynasty Vipers Vipercast.
It's time to go behind the grind, presented again by Fantasy Points Media Group. As always, I am joined by Major Caldwell. That is way too major media, new Twitter handle, same beautiful mug. And on today's show, we have the creator of the preseason matchup analysis. He's all about the big boards. And if you're about winning money, hey, this guy has not lost any money in 20 years of playing high stakes fantasy football. He's also one of the Kings Classic champs. Yes, he's got a beautiful picture holding a belt. And yes, I am jealous. He is the one and only Doug Orth. How you doing, Dougie?
You come with the applause and the kick-ass intro. That's awesome, man. Here's the belt. Here's the belt behind me if you want the proof.
No,
so.
it's right there. It just casually like, oh yeah. So on today's show, we're just gonna sit here. Look at my Funko Pops. Oh, you got a belt there. I see how this is going to work. Yeah, I remember that Kings Classic belt. There's a beautiful picture of you and Drew just kind of rubbing it in whenever I go look at the banner. I mean, hey, it is what it is. If you're the champ, you got to show it off. I mean, that's how it works, doesn't it?
I was just there for the photo op. I don't know what you're talking about. So
just add a little bit of a beautician aspect to the picture there. So we're going to talk all things. We're going to get right into your journey. We're going to go behind the grind with Doug here. Maybe he's going to teach us how to Dougie. Major, you in for this? Can we learn how to Dougie? No? Okay. It's all right. I am probably one of the best stool dancers you'll ever meet. All the rhythm is from the waist up, everything down. It does not work. It's not how you don't want to see me dance. But I could bust out a pretty mean worm, which is out there on the internet somewhere. So
you said so much stuff that's just. I'm gonna be nice today, and we're gonna just focus on Doug because I do not want to just go into everything you just said right now.
Well, I got the same sways in my stash, right? Just a little. Anyway, we're going to go in here. We're going to talk about your journey. We're going to get some information on those preseason matchup analysis because I know you've been working hard on those here right now. I mean, we talk about the grind. We talk about everything that goes into it. We talked about off the show how much more work goes into the off season than it goes into the regular season. So I know right now, if you're anything like me, we're getting ready for the regular season because then it's time just to kind of we're kind of one dimensional here on where our focus is. Matchups weekly, we know where we're going. Off season, the heads just vote everywhere. I mean, there's all kinds of information out there that we're bringing in and then redistributing to the public and to our Patreons and to the fantasy football fans out there. Now, Doug, Are you ready to relax? Are you ready just to get this season going?
Oh, I'm chill. Totally chill.
You look chill. So,
I'm sorry. One of my I have 3 jobs actually. One with FF Today, one I do news blurbs for USA Today, and then I also referee or serve as a basketball official, high school basketball official. The reason I mention that is because even working 16, 20 hours doing the news blurbs for USA Today, I'm still not getting all the information I need. So there's just think about that if you think that this is just something that we, do off and on, or, whenever I get a lunch break, whatever. No. Oh no. It's year round. Yep. It's year round. Exactly. So
there is no off season, right? No off season.
No.
But you mentioned we are in that kind of an area there where it's kind of okay. We can kind of relax, but we don't want to relax on today's show. We want to know if Doug Orth is coming in with that championship belt to the Kings Classic. He's walking into the Blanda division, walking into that draft room. What is that intro music going to be to cue it up for Doug? What are we listening to? Let the people know you're there.
Wow.
Please say, teach me how to Dougie. I mean, you should just walk around in that all the time.
Right. Well, there's a better chance I can walk like an Egyptian or do the icky shuffle than the Dougie.
There you go.
Wow, you hit me. For the longest time.
While you're thinking about that, there, I was just gonna say, you mentioned "Walk Like an Egyptian." I'm thinking like "Walk Like a Dinosaur," "Walk the Dinosaur." You remember that song back in the '80s?
No.
Yeah, there we go. Come on, man. You got to look it up on YouTube right now. I promise you will not be disappointed.
Walk like a dinosaur?
Walk the Dinosaur.
Yeah.
Cue it up. Fantastic tune.
It is major. It is. I did lead the train when that was popular back in the late 90s. So let's go with the train. That's an easy one for a guy, aging guy like myself to do now. So.
For those who don't know the aging train type thing here, you want to cue up a few lyrics from that or what?
Sure. Come on, ride the train and ride it. Woo woo. Oh, did you want me to actually try? I'm sorry.
You said it like a robot. He was like, "Come on, ride the train," like Terminator.
I don't think people want to hear my falsetto. My voice stays in the basement, so
it's
better when my voice stays in the basement.
Sound like the Terminator at a karaoke bar. Come on, ride the train
and ride it. Woo woo.
Well, Doug, I know we were supposed to get together there for dinner in the King's Classic there in Canton, Ohio. You missed on the karaoke there. We had even Scott Angle. Scott Angle was out there singing "Ice Ice Baby" and "Walk This Way." I mean, hey, for a man like Scott Angle to bust a move, I mean, he had the moves down and everything.
I saw the video on him "Walk This Way." Yep. I've already added it to the itinerary for next year.
Excellent.
That's going to be the karaoke, not "Walk This Way."
So we got that song going on there, but hey, everyone's got that guilty pleasure tune. I mean, there's always that one song that we don't want our buddies to know about that we like to listen to. We low key love this tune. What is that song for you?
Well, I was going to say for the longest time, "Take on Me" from Aha was one of my favorite songs, or my go-to favorite song. So, well, to answer your question quickly, I'll go with that.
I can dig that. That's I still like that song. I mean, that's a good low-key song to kind of chill out to.
Yep.
I don't even think I know that one.
Well, we're just adding to Major's YouTube list right now, the songs that he needs to take a listen to before next week's show.
Yeah.
Take on me.
Oh, I know that one. Yeah, that's a classic. All right.
See, I will not restrict my voice to just the basement. I know how horrible it actually is, and I don't care.
And he really tried right now too.
I want a repeat invitation here. So let's once I get the second invitation, then we'll hear the falsetto.
Yeah, let's get into you a little bit more. So as a kid, did you play any sports? And if you did, how did it develop you as a youth?
Yeah. So my first love was always basketball, which kind of explains why, to a certain degree, I'm a basketball official now. But yeah, basketball was my sport up until the late 90s, I think. And I'll maybe get into that in a little bit, why the change. But yeah, I started out. First of all, I grew up in a town of 350 people. I'd like to believe that I win the award there as far as the guest that came from the smallest hometown. So
yeah,
actually, it's a village. It's considered a village in Nebraska. That's how small it is. So we didn't have a stoplight for a while, and we had to have a part-time cop sometimes. So anyway, so started out doing the thing in Diller. Actually ended up being an all-state basketball player my sophomore year. Helped our school go to state for the first time in, I believe, 63 years my freshman year.
Wow.
And then my sophomore year we were abysmal, but I was still, I guess, I still impressed enough people to be all-state that year. Transferred schools, hoping to increase my Division I prospects, and without giving you the 30-minute version on why that didn't happen, let's just say it didn't happen. And so that's very much in a nutshell my basketball story.
Yeah, and so who's some of your favorite teams and players growing up? It could be basketball, football, whatever.
Yeah, I idolized Magic Johnson for most of my youth.
Good choice.
Up until the the reports came out about him that ended up being true. Then to this day, I'm a Miami Heat fan. The reason I'm a Miami Heat fan is because I loved watching Glenn Rice back in the late 80s. And so I believe he joined the Heat in their maybe third or fourth year of existence.
Yeah.
And I've been a Heat fan ever since then.
All right, I was going to get a question there about a Nebraska boy there cheering for the Miami Heat. Something didn't quite jive with me on that. And shout out to small towns. So I just looked at my town's population as the 2016 consensus. Hey, 231. I'm right there with you. Small town. We still don't have a stoplight out there. I'm not even sure there's a stop sign anymore. I'm sure there is one somewhere before you go on the highway. But
my high school graduating class had more than both of your towns combined. We had 900 kids graduate in my class. That's crazy.
That's insane. I mean, I don't think I've ever come to. I went to the big city for high school, and that was like 64,000. So that was a huge jump up for me going to the big city at 64,000. And again, not a big deal.
I was going to say, Matt, one of the beautiful things about growing up in a state that doesn't have any professional teams is you really get to choose. I mean, a lot of people will choose the most local team, which for us was the Chiefs, but Chiefs, but we didn't have any basketball really anywhere close. Denver would be the closest, I think. And so if you don't go for the local team, then you can just kind of pick and choose. Either maybe you have an allegiance, because my favorite football team growing up was the Bengals, and part of the reason was a University of Nebraska graduate named Jim Scow. And I don't expect you guys to remember who Jim Scow is.
No,
but he was. That was back when the Bengals were good in the 80s, and caught them on a Monday night game, and just liked how they looked. That was back in '86, I want to say, and then I knew that they already had Jim Scow. They also had Dave Remington, who you may know from the Remington Award that they hand out every year in the college game. He played for the Bengals for a while too. So the Bengals were an easy team to like back then, before the dark days in the 90s and early aughts.
I thought maybe it was just a Chris Collinsworth connection there, that you really just love Chris Collinsworth out there.
Well, yeah, if you can plug me right into the Pro Football Focus right there.
But you had some good teams to cheer for there in Nebraska. I mean, that was kind of in that height of Nebraska football when they were arguably one of the greatest football teams ever to step on the field. I mean, there's arguments for those Miami teams, but that Nebraska team, that was probably, top two for sure. Guaranteed.
Are you talking with Tommy Frazier and those guys, or who are you talking?
Yeah, you're talking about the '95 team that just blew out Florida in the national championship game. That one's generally referred to as, if not the most dominant team, certainly just like Matt said, either top two or top five. I've seen it described as the most dominant, and I tend to agree.
Yeah. Well, they weren't just an offensive team; they could play some defense there too. And a lot of these teams that we talk about in college football history were one or the other. I mean, Miami had a pretty good defense, but they were known for that offense. Nebraska, they could do it both ways. I mean, however you wanted to play the game, they could definitely play the game that way. So it must have been some kind of treat watching that in your home state and be like, okay, this is something to root for. I mean, I got no pro team, but you know what? I've got this college team to kind of get behind.
And that's how it is in Nebraska. Nebraska football is the pro team. And you can see it that we've got a sellout streak that dates back to the 60s. So it's just incredible. They're actually worried that that Memorial Stadium might not sell out for the first time in about 50 years, every home game. So, yeah.
So I kind of understand that, because growing up in LA, during the 80s and 90s, we didn't have any football teams as well. So that's why I'm a 49ers fan, because it was like the closest team, so I totally get that.
Yeah, growing up in Canada, we never had an NFL team, so I just became the closest fan of the Raiders. So, that's how that works. But let's talk about these preseason matchups, because you've been doing this for quite some time. I mean, going back FF Today, where you primarily are at there, I mean, you've been doing these preseason matchup analysis. Is it 2003? Is it gone that far back, or? Yeah,
I developed it. I had the idea for it back in 2004. I started actually writing for FF Today back in 2006, and so that's kind of when it officially started. I as I like to say, the big board, and then what is called now preseason matchup analysis has basically been the culmination of 20 plus years of playing fantasy football.
Wow.
Yeah, because I heard you had that developed before you went over to FF today, so I was just trying to get my timeline there a little bit straight. But it's been a while. I mean, if you've been anywhere since like 2006, I mean, that says something. I think more about your personality than anything. That hey, you're in it for the long haul. I mean, anyone who stays anywhere for any period of time. I mean, we just don't see that anymore, especially in the fantasy football world. You see people writing multiple sites, going multiple places. There's not anything wrong with that. It's just, it's hard to find that one person who's been somewhere to kind of, hey, I'm going to plant my flag here. I'm going to set up camp and see where it kind of goes. That said, you've had some opportunity. I mean, did some stuff there. Obviously, you said USA Today, made some appearances there on XM Radio with Fantasy Drive. So you've been around. I mean, you've established yourself here and there, but just kind of talk about how that preseason matchup analysis all came about. Where did the brainchild for that develop?
Well, I think the easiest way to go about it used to be mistaken as a strength of schedule tool, but it's really more of a strength of individual matchup tool. It started out as simple as wanting to avoid players that face the Ravens or the Steelers in the playoffs. It has since evolved into something that I believe allows me to account for a particularly difficult or easy individual schedule. In short, it's become a very nuanced organism. And I'll just, for example, if you don't mind indulging me here for a second. When I go through the process of evaluating and grading matchups at running back, I consider the player and his strengths as well as the run-stopping ability of the opponent. I don't base my anticipated defensive strength on last year's numbers either, but I rather consider how the new additions on defense fit into the scheme and the age of that defense. From there, I consider the strength of the offense line. Now, in the case of somebody like Austin Eckler, I'll also consider how often I expect him to win his individual matchup against a linebacker or safety on a pass play. So somebody like Austin Eckler is probably not going to have. I go green as in a very good matchup, white as in a slight lean toward the offense, a yellow slight lean toward the defense, red heavy lean toward the defense. Somebody like Austin Eckler, somebody like McCaffrey, they're not going to have many red matchups because they do it both ways. And good luck. If you can find me 5 linebackers that can cover McCaffrey or Eckler, feel free to name them because I can't think of five linebackers or safeties that can do that. So considering they get at least half of their production through the passing game, I can't really grade them as a red matchup. Right. Same thing with those cheat code quarterbacks. They may have a very difficult passing matchup, but a Jalen Hurts, a Lamar Jackson, if they can rush for 50 yards and a touchdown, that's not a bad day. And then whatever they add in the passing game, that's just gravy. So that's where that came from. Or that's a little bit peek under the hood anyway.
How long do you lock yourself into a room to finish that project?
Okay. Well, yeah. So I wish it was just locking myself into a room for a day and saying that it's my day in hell, but it's a little bit more than that. Ends up being basically a 6-week process. Now, granted, I'm not at the computer 8 hours a day, carving away and chipping away at it, but it's something that with everything else I do takes about 6 weeks to. First of all, I grade the matchups. That takes about a week, sometimes a week and a half. Then I go through. So, as I like to say in my big board write up, there's somewhere between 8,000 and 9,000 matchups that I'm grading for these guys, because you take the 17-week season times 10 players per team plus or times another for all 32 teams, you get up there into the 1,000 of decisions. So it takes some time. After I do the grading, then I go through and do target and carry projections. And then that helps me arrive to the point where I can start projecting per carry and per target numbers. And then rather than what I used to do is I would go through and try to project game by game stat totals. Basically what you would think you would see in the box score for that game, right? That made the process way too convoluted. And then whenever something changed, somebody got cut, then I'd have to go through hour or two of redoing that team's projections because one guy got cut or some news came out that this guy's role was reduced or whatever. And I just had to find something that was slightly more malleable than that. So that's how we arrived at this. And I've found it to be not only easier, but it's helped me be more successful too. So it was a good thing.
Well, clearly, Major, this is something I'm not planning on doing anytime soon. But you've been doing this for almost 20 years, this whole matchup analysis thing. I mean, that is absolutely – you've got to be able to find a shortcut by now to kind of speed the process up by at least 12 hours.
by 12 hours, right? Well,
And
again,
you have the trademark on that. Like, do you? Who has a trademark on that? That seems like it should be yours.
well, as I like to, I wouldn't say I'd like to say, but as I often will say and tell friends of mine, it's you've heard the expression, what is it? Often duplicated but never often imitated but never
duplicated. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. I've seen other sites try. I think the closest thing I've seen is Pro Football Focus, but I know that they don't account for the individual matchups like I do, and I think that gives me a significant edge.
Man, let's talk about you a little bit more. Let's talk about a decision that changed the trajectory of your life.
Well, I think I can tell you two of them. I mentioned I transferred. We're going back to high school again. What we were just talking about a few minutes ago.
Yep.
Making that transition, even though it didn't work out basketball-wise for me, making that transition from the small town to the bigger school, which it's still not approaching your high school numbers, but at least our graduating class was 150 people.
Right.
So, but no, that helped me. That got me away from home. I wasn't exactly living on my own, but I was kind of supporting myself. I lived with my sister and brother-in-law for those final 2 years of high school. So I got kind of a head start or jump start on my living on my own there. That was one decision. The other one is coming out here to Connecticut back in 2006 to start working at ESPN. I'm no longer with ESPN, but making that jump, I didn't know anybody out here. I'd spent a whopping, I think, 30 hours out here. I flew in for the interviewed the next day, and flew out that same evening. And that was the only time I'd been in Connecticut. And then was about 6 months later, they ended up hiring me, and then I moved out here, and that probably had a bigger effect on my life than the high school one, but both of them are notable in my life for sure.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this journey here. Let's talk about your journey in fantasy football. We talked about basically 2004, that matchup analysis thing kind of came through, starting with FF Today back in 2006. So you have a little bit of experience here to draw from. What are some of the biggest changes you see in the industry now compared to way back then? And I say way back then just to kind of make us all feel a little bit older.
Right. All right. Well, understand, Major. I'm talking to you, Major.
Yeah.
There was no Twitter or advanced analytics back then. So trying to put something like this together without that, that's why I had to stop at basically reputation. I was watching a lot of football back then, certainly, but a lot of that, what I had to do was based on reputation because you had nothing else to go on. Certainly, like FF Today they've had their points for and points against. That was considered advanced stuff back then, back in 2006. So, and Matt, I'm sure I think I see you shaking your head, Matt. That's stuff that was ahead of its time back in 2006. For the most part, getting information like that is obviously much easier now. What I don't like about the industry is how hot takey it's become.
Oh yes.
I believe there's a quote. I'm going to butcher this, I'm sure, but there's a quote from Carl Sagan that says, "Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence," and we are missing that.
All the evidence.
We're missing all the evidence, and people will throw out 10 hot takes, get one of them right, and plant their flag on that one hot take for years if they have to. So, yeah. I don't know if I've included the good and the bad in there, but those are the some of the things that come right to mind as far as how much it's changed in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Well, one, don't worry about butchering anything because we don't fact check that to begin with on this show. So you can say whatever you want and we'll just kind of believe it as truth. So even if that quote was wrong, it's not going to make a difference. Two, I'm going to have to go rewrite my hot take article that I got ready to queue up here right now.
I just asked for more evidence, Matt. Just more evidence. That's all I'm asking. Come on, bro.
Matt,
Remember,
Matt,
have you ever used that gorilla gif? You know, there's a gif there right now on Twitter where the gorilla like goes back, reaches, grabs something from behind him, and throws it. That's basically my fantasy football analysis right there. That's basically how, if it sticks, I mean, that is good. It's like, hey, we got Breece Hall here. We got Breece Hall here. We got Elijah Mitchell. Let's throw him on there. Whatever sticks on the window the longest.
Major, that sounds a lot like his draft strategy at the Kings.
That is exactly how it rolls. And for the record,
Doug getting in there, I like it.
I want the record to show here that Major is actually older than I am. I'm going to throw that out right now. Okay?
Oh, why are you deflecting now? Why are you deflecting? Doug got you. Now you want to point at me? Okay.
And if I'm this great, I want to know what he's using to keep that beautiful beard as clean as it looks right now. I'm just going to. I'm not going to make out any kind of conversation. I'm just going to kind of point that out to those who are watching the show right now.
It's called deflecting, ladies and gentlemen. This is
he heard the commercial, no play for Mr. Gray, so that's why.
Okay, Doug. I think Doug got a little jokes over here. I see. Okay, he knows how to.
Don't allow this train to get going.
Exactly. Let's get back on track though. Let's. So what is something that people wouldn't like expect or realize from you that they typically wouldn't know about you? We already heard your singing chops already a little bit earlier. Do you have any like hidden talents or anything like that that people may not realize or even know that you have?
Well, apparently he's a stand-up comedian, so we can put that on there as well.
Yeah,
that's right. I didn't have room for that on the Twitter bio, or I certainly.
Exactly.
Great question. I'm very. You would definitely want me for 80s music trivia night. I would say that. Songs and artists, I'm very good at. Yeah, that's my skill. No, that's the one that pops up immediately to mind.
What is this? 80s movies, 80s music?
Just music.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
In fact, I'd like to challenge myself. I don't always listen to 80s music on Sirius XM, but I try to challenge myself to come up with the artist before it either pops up, or if maybe I have the GPS on, so I have a different screen on, and I have somebody in the car with me, I'll shoot out the artist and the song before they do.
Who's your favorite 80s artist? Is it a group? Is it a little Duran in there? Little
Glass Tiger. He looks like a Glass Tiger guy to me.
Oh. Don't forget me when I'm gone, huh? Yeah. Survivor is one that comes pretty. I like Duran. I do like Duran. I think Survivor is the one that comes immediately to mind.
So a question for you now. Now let's put this out here. We're talking Survivor here. Did Survivor make Rocky, or did Rocky make Survivor?
Ooh, that's a really good question. That's the best.
I don't think you could have one without the other. I don't think those Rocky movies hit the way they do Rocky without the montage. And when he goes to Russia there and he's training, and boom, Survivor kicks on. When he's ready to go against Clubber Lang and Eye of the Tiger flies on. I mean, I don't think those Rocky movies have the same impact, and vice versa. I don't think Eye of the Tiger and any of those songs really hit the same way without the Rocky movies. It's like Kenny Loggins.
You nailed it, Kenny Loggins. Now I regret shaving the beard. So, no, if that's a great question and great point. If I had to lean one way or the other, I would say Rocky made those songs,
right?
Because those songs don't have the same impact if you don't have the Rocky image in your head. So, but 55-45 maybe. I mean, it's yeah.
It's not as bad as Kenny Loggins. I mean, Kenny Loggins is only good because of the movies that he was able to get into there, like the Footloose and Top Gun and all that other kind of stuff. I mean, the Danger Zone. That you don't even know it's Kenny Loggins. You just know that's a Top Gun song, right? I mean, that's basically how we view it there.
Hey, really quick, Top Gun, the new Top Gun, up, down. What were we thinking? The new Top Gun?
Did not see the new Top Gun.
Okay, I watched it and I don't know where I'm at on it. I'm just like,
Well, I
Just
don't think that really changed a lot. I think a lot of people, even the original Top Gun, were kind of like, Now, when they watch it back nowadays, I mean, back then it was pretty good back in the day.
yeah.
Plus, I sport a pretty mean pair of aviators too. Now, when we talk about this grind. We talk about what goes in the off season, this and that. In season versus off season, what's going on for Doug? And then how do you find time to recharge? Is there a recharge period where you're like, you know what? It's the draft. I'm going to recharge because I'm not a draft guy. Or maybe it's something else where you kind of find that 2-3 week period where you're like, okay, I'm going to take some time off. Or like you mentioned, September's rolling in. My preseason, all my rankings are kind of now taken care of here. I got a little bit of a week and a half break here, and then I'm going to get right back into everything.
I think the last, I'm going to say 10 years, there's about a 2 or 3 week stretch right after the Super Bowl and before the Combine that you get to kind of take a step back. Fortunately or unfortunately, I've also been doing draft coverage for FF Today since, I believe, 2013. I want to say, I feel like Eddie Lacy was part of the first class that I evaluated. So that's been going on for almost 10 years up to. And that was just something that I saw that was lacking in the industry and now it seems like about every site has somebody has a draft profile or whatnot. But that was just something I wanted to add to the website that I thought, like I said, that was lacking in the industry. So, and then like we kind of talked before the show, all this work that goes into draft week or draft weeks, you get to kind of sit back and kind of enjoy the ups and downs that goes along with drafting, and in my case, high stakes drafting, where when your number 25 guy falls to you at the end of the 4th round, that almost makes it worth it. Now, whether it plays out right or not, or the way you want it to or not, is another story. But those are the feelings that you really look forward to when you're doing all this work.
Yeah, let's shift a little bit and get into a super personal question. No, what's on your YouTube playlist? You look like a cat video watcher guy. Like what's?
Yeah, I should be better with that. I should actually have a playlist.
Like if you had a playlist, what would you be watching?
Oh, you mean music or music,
podcast, just any random thing on YouTube.
Yeah, believe it or not, I'm not much of a podcast guy in terms of listening to podcasts. Vipercast now, but not too much of anything else. But when I go to YouTube, okay, so during the spring, that's how I will get the majority of my clips that I use. Because if you go to my draft profiles, I'll point out and I'll pull out the time codes that accentuate or that show off the particular skill that I'm either saying is a strength or a weakness for that player. So, and then I put like 4 or 5 time codes for a running back's vision, for example, or a quarterback's anticipation. So college football during the spring, during the rest of the year, it'll be mostly music. I'll say one song that comes to mind is Scorpions' "Wind of Change." That's probably the one. If I can do a karaoke song next year for the expo, it might be "Wind of Change." So, or at least I'll try it anyway. I can't.
Matt's gonna have it queued up for you next year. Matt will have it queued up.
Yeah, no, I've got this clipped out right now. I'm bringing this actual clip to the Kings Classic, so it's going to be right out there
Nice,
when we step into that draft room. Hey, karaoke Sunday night. Just throwing it out there right now. Let's get it going.
Well, look at that. I got dinner 7:30. 7:30 is going to last at least 2 hours.
Gotta go.
So I got to ask this because I'm going to get a little bit off here. I'm going to jump all over the place before Major's next question there. So I brought my lovely wife down to Canton, and it wasn't really her cup of tea, but she kind of made do with it, and she kind of enjoyed herself as much as she possibly could. Now, I see that you brought yourself a little an acquaintance down to Canton there as well. How did she enjoy the whole trip?
She does like her sports, and About her only complaint was for Saturday, instead of watching us go through 2-3 hour drafts, that she's going to take the car key. She's going to take the car keys next year. Other than that, I think she had a blast, and already mentioned about coming next year as well. So yeah.
And doesn't that kind of feel a little bit different to be able to share that with them as well when you go down there? It's like you see the work that you're putting in, and then you get to see it in this element. Like, I know my wife was like, why are they asking you to sign that? Why do they ask you to take it? What is wrong with these people? I mean, they know who you are, right?
Without question. I think it's, I think she actually mentioned that once. It's while we were there, it was nice seeing me in my element, and just some of the, I know where I stand. I don't attract big crowds yet. It's going to happen, but not yet. But certainly at the expo, I was part of the auction panel, for example, and then to come out and basically have, there was one stretch where I had 4 or 5 people around me asking questions, and I must have been talking for 30, 45 minutes after the auction panel was over, just about various things regarding fantasy. So yeah, it was, that kind of stuff. It's as close as most of us are probably going to be to being treated like a star, or and not that that's what we're in this for, but it's nice to be recognized like that and be sought after for your advice.
Yeah, that was a good question. I like that one, Matt. Let's see, where are we at here? So if you weren't in this fantasy football atmosphere, sphere, whatever you want to call it, what would you be doing? And let's take off the referee as well. Let's take that off, because you already gave that to us. What would you be doing if it wasn't if you weren't doing this?
That's a great question, and most days I wouldn't want to consider it. I know what I was doing before I came out here, which was trying to find temp jobs and I was actually working in human resources for a place called Oriental Trading back in Nebraska. There's a decent chance that I would have become a full-time employee there had ESPN not called. But as far as what I'd be doing now in my mid 40s, I would probably be doing a job that I don't care to do. Let's just put it that way.
Exactly.
So I don't have a particular occupation in mind that I think I would be doing. I would be in sports, or at least I would be trying. Can be in sports somehow. But I'm glad I haven't had to consider that question more than I have.
Yeah, that's the most honest I think anyone's ever answered that question. Like, doing something that you would not want to be doing. That is like that kind of hit me in the heart. Like, oh man, I feel you right there.
So you mentioned ESPN. I mean, a lot of people are trying to get their foot into the industry one way or the other. Was that your first attempt to kind of get into the industry there, like ESPN, or was that more of a different type of job that you didn't really see it going to where you got to today, right? I mean, a lot of people get into ESPN. It's not necessarily into sports. It might be the mail guy or something like that, or something on the tech side rather than in the actual analysis. Was that your step into fantasy football, or was that more of a, I'm going to take a step into sports here?
My first foray, I guess, well, let's say in fantasy sports, I did work for another website back in 2000 and 2001. I think even into 2002, if I remember right. So even though I didn't get paid for that position, that was kind of my first official foray into sports, not including the, like, being an intramural director back in college type of stuff. So when I come out to ESPN in 2006, I was hired as a production assistant. And that's the job. I took that job at 30, where most of the people that were taking that job were right out of college. So, but I took that job with the idea I was either going to do my damnedest to either work for .com or the magazine. And the production assistant job did allow for us to show off at least a little bit of that side, or creative side. They would ask us for story ideas, and then we'd have to craft up. It could be the story idea is something as simple as recommending something for the cafeteria, or it could be saying that I think this would be a great idea for a show, or I would like to add this to baseball tonight, stuff like that. Anything that they thought could improve the network. So, so I tried to use those story ideas as a way to impress the people that I needed to impress, to get to push the envelope in that regard. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for me, at least not right away. I did end up working for the magazine about 10 years later for a few months as a temp job, but it didn't quite pan out the way I wanted it to, in terms of working for ESPN and having that comfort and that peace of mind that comes along with a full-time job with ESPN. But in the end, I guess I'm doing what I wanted to do, just on my own, as opposed to having a company support.
Right.
So that did sound like you learned some lessons there, kind of learned some valuable experience through that whole journey there. But at fantasy football as a whole, and this is one of my favorite questions we ask each and every week, what have you learned through fantasy football? And then maybe more importantly, what has fantasy football taught you about yourself?
I always knew I was a numbers guy. I can remember memorizing multiplication tables when I was 4 and 5 years old. I've always loved numbers. I don't think I realized how much I like research. Just digging and clawing into finding out why things are the way they are. And I think that's very important with what we do in sports. Our job I'm pretty strong about this. Our job as analysts is to explain what happened, not just regurgitate numbers.
Right.
Explain where the numbers came from. Explain. You should be able, as a good fantasy analyst, you should be able to look at a game and I don't mean you should be able to analyze it the same way that the guys that get paid millions of dollars to do it on TV do. I mean, they have a lot more tools, more often than we do. But we should be able to, if we watch enough games, we should be able to analyze how and why things happen. And that's, along with the whole hot takey thing that I mentioned earlier, I think we've gotten to a point where people consider analysis to be regurgitating numbers, and if it supports my belief, then that's all I need to hear. And that's, anyway. So I love the numbers, love the research. I think that's what I've learned about my time in fantasy sports.
See, Major, Tara's not the only one who loves numbers, just because you and I aren't big numbers guys. I mean, I just memorized my 9 times tables a couple of weeks ago, so I'm sharing that with the kids. Did you know if you take like the number that 9 is being multiplied by and you subtract 1, and then you add whatever that number is plus to give you that equals up to 9, it gives you the answer. So like 9 times 9 is 9 minus 1 gives you the 8. 8 plus 1 is 9, so the answer is 81. It only took me like 40 years to get there, but hey, we get there. We're making some ground here. Now, we know that, fantasy football often teaches us more about ourselves than what we could teach others. I mean, it's just one of those kind of trial by error kind of things. But along the way, there are people that cross our paths, relationships that mean a little bit more to us than maybe some other ones. I mean, when we get to the King's Classic, I mean, you got Drew Davenport there. That is a fantastic individual there. Jim Coventry. Is there a nicer guy in fantasy football than Jim Coventry? I mean, the way he wears those medium T-shirts and pulls off that look. I mean, not only does he look good, but he's absolutely a beauty of a man. Now, who are some of those people that for you that kind of helped you along the way that you have a little bit more respect for?
No, I think you nailed 2 of them right there. I especially Drew in the last year. Drew and I have certainly talked more in the last year. Jim, I met Jim the first year that we were invited to the King's Classic back in 2018, and he needed a ride back from the Hall of Fame because I think all the other analysts left, and I was the last one around. And that's not the entire story, but we did, but that was part of the story. So. So yeah, I think you nailed those 2 guys right there. Yeah, I'll just go with those 2 guys. I know I talked to Brian Drake, a fair amount. does a great job hosting his pod, and then actually had I'll mention two other guys in the last 2 years. Of course, JJ. We know JJ the auctioneer for our Kings Classic. Great guy there too. And then I've hung out with Dr. Jesse Morse each of the last 2 years. And that's the guy. You can tell how passionate the guy is about medicine, about what he does. He can go on for hours if you let him, in just in terms of what he does, the medical knowledge he has. It's and I've told him both years that I've talked to him, I said the industry needs a lot more people like you and a lot less people that just regurgitate numbers. So I thought I was going to say 2, but I guess there's 5 right there that 5 guys that really stick out in terms of the guys I met at the Kings Classic.
Well, there's so many people that help us along the way. I mean, it's invaluable. I mean, none of us get to where we get without a lot of help along the way. I mean, yeah. I kind of joke about it all the time. If there's ever an opportunity where I can get wherever I want to get at some point, it's going to be because a lot of people help me along the way. I love the Jim Coventry and how he got stuck in the Hall of Fame and you had to give him a ride back, because last season I didn't have a ride to the Hall of Fame for the Kings Classic. So I caught a ride with him not knowing who he was. So I basically I knew the RotoWire thing. I've seen him on the YouTube. I've seen him on Twitter and stuff, but I didn't get an opportunity to actually meet him or talk to him. But yeah, he's like, yeah, come on in my vehicle. You're a complete stranger. But exactly. Hey, most Canadians are friendly, so you seem like a good guy. Come on in. So he gave me and Mauricio a ride up to the Kings
Classic. You guys
Classic.
got rides by the same guy in different times? Is he like a fantasy guy, or is he just like a Lyft driver on the side, or like an Uber driver?
That's Bob Long's part-time job. no, he's
another good guy right there.
Yeah, Bob Long. I don't know if you knew this. Bob Long drives Hall of Famers to and from.
Yeah, he told us about that. He has some really good stories too.
Yeah, so that's why I made that joke. But yeah, Jim. So yeah, like I said, we everybody had left by the time that I believe I was getting ready to head out, and we had talked a little bit during the lunch in between the drafts that first year. So I mean, it wasn't like we were complete strangers. I mean, we talked for 30 minutes. So I guess if that doesn't make us complete strangers, but. Then we talked some more on our way to Buffalo Wild Wings. That's how it was the first couple of years at the Kings Classic. Is you would draft, and then you'd spend the rest of the day closing down B-dubs, and so that's so between talking to him at lunch, we're talking about Jim here, obviously. Between talking to him at lunch, talking to him on the drive over to B-dubs, and then obviously a few more hours after we got to B-dubs. Yeah, it was the start of us talking for quite a bit for the last 5 years, and it's the beauty of what he does. I don't say this about many people in the industry. He seems to see football in a similar way as that I do. I mean, I think we would both consider ourselves film guys. We both, I believe, we use analytics and numbers to help explain it, but we don't rely on them. And I think it's increasingly rare to see that in the industry.
That is so true. Speaking of the industry, though, give one last piece of advice for those of us trying to make it in this fantasy football world, and give us your best piece of parenting advice, even if you don't have kids.
All right, I'm going to have to mull over the parenting advice.
Hey, you coach basketball for probably junior high and high school kids. I'm sure there's some ideas of circulated through your mind at one point.
Don't be a jerk.
That's number one. For sure.
Okay, so I'm sorry. What was the first question again? I'm sorry.
Advice for those who are trying to make it in the fantasy football industry.
I don't know that I have anything revolutionary there. Find your own voice for sure. The industry has a lot of sharp and smart people in it, but we by no means have all the bases covered, and don't let anybody tell you differently. So there is a niche. There is going to be a niche for. We could have 100 more people join the industry within the next year, and not all the niches are going to be filled.
Right.
That's just, or at least not feel it adequately. So understand that if you can always attempt and keep an open mind, be willing to learn, and understand that when you think you've got it all figured out, you're not anywhere close.
Right.
I like to say, and this is not a humble bragging thing. I like to think that I'm, at least as far as the industry, and I hate to brag on myself, but I'd like to think that as far as the industry goes, I'm one of the smarter football people in it. Okay.
I mean, with the belt shining behind you, we have to kind of agree with that,
Now, with that said, I know maybe 20% of what I need to know about
Right.
football. It's just there. I'm not going to get to the point where I'm even close to got it all figured out. So don't go into this thinking that you're going to get it all figured out. Listening is huge. Other people are going to have good ideas. You're not going to have the monopoly on good ideas. Maybe I've probably given you 3 or 4 things now. I've just the point being is the things that make you as a successful human being in any other industry but besides fantasy. Find your niche, listen more than you talk, stuff like that. That's going to play well here too.
Good advice.
Yeah, as far as parenting, I used to say, even though I've never been a parent and don't intend to be a parent, 90% of good parenting is caring.
There you
So
go.
if you care enough, you'll find a way to
make it work.
Exactly.
And growing up in a small town, when those streetlights come on, it means get your butt back home. That's basically the cue for you to come back home.
Hey, that was in the city as well. We had that same rule.
I still.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, I still remember very well that we didn't need curfews. We knew that if we came home after midnight, Mom was going to be waiting for us at the kitchen table, and because she couldn't go to sleep until all the kids got home.
Yep.
And if you didn't want to make Mom upset, you got home at a decent time. So, and she was as great as a mom as you could ask for, but you didn't want to disappoint her in that way. So no one ever showed up late.
There you go.
Well, I'm going to be the fantasy football mama here, and I'm going to make sure we get out of this show at a decent time. Hey, see how I did that, Major? Look at that. Segue. That all said, hey, we're doing some pretty good things there over at Fantasy Points right now. Use promo code 22Vipers10. Get 10% off that subscription right now. Check out Doug over at FF today. He's got all kinds of things going on. These preseason matchups you don't want to miss out on them. And I'm pretty confident it's a pretty good, reasonable price to get those, isn't it? What's the price, Doug?
Well, as our friend Marcus Grant would say, free 99. So, yeah.
Hey, and I'm a big believer. Hey, I talk about it all the time. I'm frugal, I'm cheap, and anything free is worth saving up for. That brings me to my next thing. Mitch's for riches, right? That's where we're going. For Major, for Doug, I'm Matt Dolan, and this has been the Dynasty Vipers Vipercast. We'll see you next week behind the grind. Take care.